Hey friends, it's Melissa here. I am live all by myself. I don't think anybody's joined me yet. So I'm just going to sit here in my new corner office. Yes, I have a fancy new corner office. It's in my bedroom. And it actually is a door because now the kids are doing school at home. And so I thought it would be hopefully fun to connect with some of you. So I'm hoping that people will join me here shortly. Or again, I will just enjoy a conversation with myself, which is not so uncommon in my world. Let's just be honest. I have a tendency to send Marco Polo videos to friends back and forth, and you're just talking to yourself. So it might not be so different. But at least Rachel's with me. So hi, Rachel. Thanks for joining for this party of one so far. Anyway, some of you may watch this later, so I'm going to tell a couple of stories while hopefully some of you join us. I would say right now I am semi-quarantined. And I say semi-quarantined because in the midst of all of the things that have happened in regards to COVID-19, Nephew Physical Therapy hit the pause button and we said, wait a minute, everybody's canceling, the world is ending, let's just stop because nobody was coming in. So we took a few days off, and what we realized is that there were people who had gotten surgery pretty much at the end of February, the beginning of April, and I'm sorry, end of February, beginning of March. See, it's April. I'm totally confused. And so what happened is those people had surgery, and we haven't done any additional surgery since then, and now they need rehab. So imagine if you had a complete rotator cuff tear, which let me tell you, that's a good 2 to 3 month rehab, because the first 6 weeks, you're not supposed to use that arm on your own at all. You're in a sling. And say it's a massive tear, so you're in a special sling and you can't go to therapy until 4 weeks out, then what? And so what we've realized in the short term is that there are people who are in essential need of physical therapy. So I am doing, like I said, I'm semi-quarantined at this point. And so we're taking care of a few of those people. And I have met actually some of the nicest people in our community. When you have some total knee replacements, you have somebody who's had foot surgery, you've had somebody who's had a shoulder issue. What else are we seeing right now? Hip surgery, just the gamut kind of all those different joints. And so it's really great to be able to step in and help them. Now, granted, it's not at all what I thought this quarantine would look like while the whole family is home. So I'm venturing out a couple times a day. So Liz has joined us. Hi, Liz. I'm like hanging out with my friends, Rachel and Liz, right now. The point of this hour is to ask me, well, almost anything, because some of you are at home and maybe you are, you've been suffering with some aches and pains, and right now you're just not going anywhere. And that's okay. Like, I totally get that. So if you're having some neck pain, some back pain, vertigo, if you want to talk about health insurance and HSAs, we'll totally talk about that. If you want to talk about how many times a day you're washing your hands and how correct they might be, we can talk about that. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep telling stories. So I'm going to tell a story. Let's see, who do I want to think of right now? What's one of the great stories I've ever had? And since there's all women here, do I just tell female stories? Actually, Hannah joined, and Hannah was texting me earlier today. Hannah's on our team, and Hannah is pregnant, and we love that she's pregnant, and I miss her. I haven't actually seen her for a few weeks because of these changes, but I'm going to get to see her soon in a team chat, so I'm looking forward to that. But Hannah was texting me today, so we'll talk to you pregnant women right now. Pregnant women, I believe, should all do physical therapy. Most of the time, as our body is changing, because let's be honest, you're going to have to push a watermelon through a garden hose. Your body has to shift and change. And our body releases this amazing hormone that makes our ligaments, which is something like a string, a tie, it's a passive structure that connects bone to bone. It's really only supposed to stop motion. But when we're pregnant, it allows that to stretch because we got to make our pelvis open up. And so Hannah was telling me she's having some SI joint pain, and that's kind of where the low back kind of meets the top of the buttock region, and there's 2 joints there, and those joints are made for stability. They're really not supposed to move. And she said she's a little bit achy in there. And so I was thinking, okay, what would I do? Well, if Hannah was essential or urgent, I would want her to, if we were at a different time, we would be doing things like massaging her glutes, because as that body is shifting and changing, those muscles get sore, her body's adjusting to all those kind of things. Well, that may not be an option in at this particular time. And so we were talking about she needs to be stronger through her pelvis. And that's where when we talk about joints that are a little bit loosey-goosey, we have too much mobility. A lot of our problems actually stem more from the fact that in my opinion, that we're weak than that we are inflexible and we need to stretch muscles. So since we're talking about Hannah, since her pelvis is getting wider, it's just what happens when we have babies, she is going to need those muscles to provide extra support. And what will happen is as your body goes through those trimesters, through those stages of pregnancy, it's going to bring up maybe any previous problems that you have. So if you've had a history of back pain or hip pain, those kind of things will resurface. And maybe if there is that history, it lets us know that there's probably been some weakness there. And so we're talking to Hannah about doing some good glute strengthening exercises. Now, when I went to set up the video tonight, I really wanted to do it where I was sitting on the floor and I could show you exercises because I teach best by moving. Except for with the technology that I have at home right now and the computer that I'm working off of, I just can't get far enough back and make sure that the sound is good. So one of the things that we would do is we're going to talk about bridging and clams. So bridging is the basic idea that you're laying on your back, envision this with me, and your knees are flat, and basically you're just squeezing your buttock and you're lifting your hips up off the floor. What that does in that situation is engages those glutes. What we often want to jump ahead to is when we talk about strengthening the glutes is we say, well, I should do squats and lunges and all those great activities. The challenge is in those positions when we're standing up, we actually have a greater likelihood of compensating or cheating. If you're joining us, feel free to put any questions in the chat. Right now we're talking through what it's like as your body is changing, as you're pregnant, and Hannah, one of our team members, was asking me today about her SI joints. So again, if you have a question, put it in the chat. I'd love to provide you with some information or even just something to think about. So we're talking about the difference between doing some strengthening or stabilization exercises, sitting or laying down, being on a table versus standing up. Now, as we progress somebody, yes, I want you to do squats and lunges and jumps and all those great dynamic things. But what we find out is when we jump too far to that scenario, the muscles actually aren't strong enough. I'm seeing that right now in a ACL client who wants to get to running and jogging and all those kind of things, and the knee is really doing well. But we did a reassessment to see really not just the knee, but how her hips, her foundation, her basement is doing. She's weak. Now, she's not a weak person, right? Like she could probably go out there and push through and do a lot more activity because the knee is actually nice and strong and stable. The problem isn't the knee, it's that if she doesn't get those hips working better, she's either going to wear out that knee or she's going to start to have some back issues and compensate. And so the body, oh, I touched my face. I don't think we're allowed to do that. The body does an amazing job of compensating. That's why many of you who watch this or listen to this later will know, well, that's hurt for decades. Most of the time, people don't come to us until they have pain later. Maybe something new. And they'll come in for knee pain, and I'm like, oh, have you ever had back pain? Oh, yeah, but that's been going on for 20 years. It's probably part of the equation. So it's why all those different pieces, it's why we want people to do a lot of basic exercises first and mastering those from a rehab perspective. So Hannah, what she knows what she should do, again, she's on our team, needs to be doing a lot more buttock strengthening, and that's not just forward. And the clams, so the clams, if you can envision that, we mentioned the clam exercise. This is where you lay on your side, your knees are slightly bent, everything is on top of each other, and you basically separate your knees. And what that does is works the outside of that. See, I'm even touching it. You can't see it because, again, I can't make my computer do what I want to do. So we want the outside of that hip. She needs the entire hip and pelvic girdle to kick in and work and support her. So Hannah, you know what you need to be doing here, girl. You need to be doing those bridges. You need to be doing those clams. She's trying to correct for the pain at this point. But the more you stabilize with those muscles and you get those working, the better the rest of this pregnancy is going to go, because, right, you know you're only going to get bigger, and it's only going to get more loose as we go through this. So I'm excited to see more of my friends join the chat here. Thank you for showing up. Again, we're doing Ask Melissa Anything. Nobody's really asked me anything, so I'm telling some stories, and I just talked about Hannah, one of our team members who is at home and pregnant right now. She's part of our quarantine crew, but from a distance, I guess you could say. And so Hannah was asking me this afternoon about some ideas to do, because she's having some SI joint pain, very normal with pregnancy. So if you have a question, you can really ask me probably almost anything. It doesn't have to just be physical therapy related, but if you've got something that you wanted some tips or help on, I'd be happy to do that. If nobody really asks me anything, I'll probably just talk to myself for a little while and then say good night. But let me think of another story. Let me think of something that's happening right now. It's always easier when I think about a specific client that we were able to help, and we think about their story, about how hard they worked or some of the things that they're working on. Let me think here. Heather, thanks for joining. Heather, you got a question for me? It's kind of a different format to do this Ask Me Anything and just sit here and watch you guys show up and leave and wonder if you have any questions for me. So it's kind of a new thing. I also want to know if maybe it's something we should do more often, because again, the idea behind this is if you're stuck at home, which most of us are, and as I was saying before, I'm semi-quarantined because I'm taking care of the post-surgical people. We have a very few number of people who are really in urgent and essential need of physical therapy. So taking care of those people during this interesting time. And so I'm semi-quarantined while the whole family's at home all the time. So if there's some things that are going on that aren't that severe, headaches, neck pain, all of those kind of things. All right. Oh, look at this. Hannah brings up numbness and tingling, and Heather asks about sciatic pain. Heather, so what do you want to know? You brought it up. What do you want to know about sciatic pain? It kind of depends. And that's that interesting thing that Hannah brought up. So Hannah brought up, what about numbness and tingling versus pain? Okay, I kind of want to say, Hannah, what about it? You know it's a really broad and big topic. I will say this. So right before we went into quarantine, Rachel and I had an opportunity to go to one of our local manufacturing companies and actually did a talk about the fact that numbness and tingling actually might be worse than pain. And why is that? So if we think about numbness and tingling, to answer your question, Hannah, when we talk about numbness and tingling, we usually indicates that there's compression on a nerve. And in my opinion, the nerve is the first to get mad at you and the last to forgive you, because they get very ticked off really easy, and they don't get over it. Because compression of a nerve, especially if we're talking about, say, sciatic pain, which whether that's actually the sciatica or it's coming further up the chain in that lumbar and low back region, when that compression happens, it affects the flow. So this is how I like to describe if there's nerve compression. Think about, it's springtime. Yay, it's springtime. The sun actually kind of came out this afternoon. We're starting to pick up sticks from the yard. My allergies aren't that bad, so I'm really loving it. So think about a square house, maybe it's your house, and you have a garden hose that's hooked into the faucet, your spigot, and you wrap it all the way around the house, and your garden hose is the perfect distance to go all the way around the house. Great, okay? So it goes around the bushes, it goes around the corner of the house, it goes through the flower garden, all of that kind of stuff. So a happy nerve is like a happy garden hose that doesn't have any kinks in it. Nobody's stepping on it. It's not getting caught in the bushes. It can move really, really well. So you can't stretch nerves because, again, they'll get really mad at you. But what can happen is that garden hose, that nerve, can get stuck somewhere. It can get stuck along the pathway. Again, it doesn't stretch, but it's got to move. And so if you've got a nerve, then whether it's near the spine where there's a disc getting compression on it, or somewhere along its pathway, like sciatica, where it shows up maybe from the buttock down, we need to remove the pressure. And so if it is in fact a disc, the good news is, folks, and most people don't realize this, that physical therapy provides some excellent tools to do that. And we really focus on extension. What most people will tell you if they have numbness and tingling either down their neck and into their arm or down their leg is they go, I feel better when I do this or when I bend over. That's true, except it only provides temporary relief because you are actually applying more pressure to that nerve. So one good example, hopefully you're following me here, is that, so again, we've got the garden hose. We want to make sure that that water is flowing through, that's sending that electrical signal because the nerves is the electric company to the muscles. And if they get compressed, they either stop sending power to the muscle or they have a lot of numbness and tingling, and permanent compression can result in permanent loss of muscle function. That's why numbness and tingling is no joke. And what we often find then, the source of that is often a disc getting ticked off or bulging in the back. Now, one of my favorite analogies these days is a s'more. Now, this s'more doesn't have chocolate, but this s'more, you have your 2 graham crackers and you have your marshmallow in between. And so this visual where we think of the graham crackers as the vertebrae and the marshmallow like a disc, when you bend forward, those 2 parts of the graham crackers are going to get closer together and the marshmallow is going to push back a little bit. And if you go backwards, it will squish that marshmallow back in. So a nice healthy marshmallow, nice healthy disc stays in place. Now, if for whatever reason, a lot of times we've abused our body, we've bent over too much, our posture stinks. Welcome to, modern day living. And that disc just isn't healthy, and sometimes it gets compressed and it squishes out. Now, not like it's a complete, it just bulges a little bit. And so that bulge can then put pressure on a nerve. So that's usually at the source. And so what we actually do, the reason why extension often, and again, there's the asterisk here, in most situations, contact your professional, all of those things. The reason why extension, going backwards, is so important because it allows those vertebrae to actually naturally get that disc to go back in place. So you think about that marshmallow is shooting out, you get that marshmallow, that graham cracker there, and you allow it to kind of squish it back in. So we need extension in our life. We spend so much time bent forward. So maybe another time we'll have to do a video where we're doing some extension exercises, stuff that we recommend everybody's doing. So, and to tie that back around to the numbness and tingling versus pain, here's the other thing you need to remember. If we can eliminate the numbness and tingling, which is always our goal, and we want it to migrate north, or we want to move further up your leg, as we get it to go away, it's very possible that the neck pain or the back pain increases. That makes people nervous, except it's much easier for us to treat back pain or neck pain than it is for us to treat a nerve that's ticked off and it's running all the way down your leg or running all the way down to your fingers. So keep that in mind. Numbness and tingling is something that you do want to address very early on. I do think that a skilled physical therapist who uses extension, sometimes some traction, and good strengthening exercises is your best bet, because here's the thing long term. If it comes back, you'll know what to do. And like I say, it's my job to work myself out of a job. So Heather, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute, but Elizabeth, that's so funny. I know her as Liz. She's asking about knee pain behind the kneecap. Okay, so my first answer is it's a butt problem, but that's because I'm obsessed with the glutes. I'm going to get comfortable here because I'm going to talk about my favorite thing, the glutes. So what we notice is when there is pain behind the kneecap, most likely it is a mechanical issue. And so when I say mechanical, it means the machine is kind of breaking down or not exactly working correctly. Okay, so here's a mechanical example. When we drive our car, okay, and our steering wheel shakes, who buys a new steering wheel? Anybody? I've never known anybody to buy a new steering wheel because it shakes. They realize they just went over railroad tracks, or they just went over a pothole. You have a flat tire, you have alignment issues, you have something. We had something once called the pitman arm go bad. I don't know what that is. I just know it's my sister's last name. And we had to replace that. after we realigned our tires. There's all of those kind of things. So mechanical really means there's that symptom going on and what's causing it. Okay, so we ask ourselves, is it that the kneecap itself is breaking down? Not commonly. Sure, can bones have issues over time? Yes, but we don't jump when you hear horse, when you hit here. How does that go when you hear hoof sounds? I think horses, not zebras. I mess up cliches all the time. Like I mess up the punchline and joke quite regularly. So when I think about the back of the kneecap, I'm thinking, how well is that kneecap going in the groove that it was designed to be in? Here's the thing about the knee. The knee is a hinge joint. A hinge joint is like the door to your bedroom. And if it's on track, it opens and closes. It opens and closes on one track. And it doesn't squeak. It doesn't have resistance. It doesn't have any problems at all. It just opens and closes. And the knee, for the most part, is designed to go in two directions. The challenge, and this is where I want to talk with my hands and have all kinds of models, but hopefully you're with me. You think about that knee joint, again, going in two directions. What happens, though, is if those two bones, okay, right here, you've got the kneecap kind of sits in front of that. If, let's try this right here. If for some reason, and again, this should be straight, femur, tibia, you've got your knee joint. If for some reason you are not strong in your glutes, so why does the butt way up here have anything to do with the knee down here? Because it's, when you think about the top part of the knee, that's made up of the femur, and the half of the hip socket is the femur. So the femur, your big, thick, heavy thigh bone, if it's rotated in the hip, okay, if it's not sitting right where it should be, if it's not nice and when I use the word aligned, I am talking about muscle strength and stability to hold it where it should be, not forcing that joint to move out of its normal range of motion. I'm talking about, are all of the lots and lots of muscles in your butt cheeks, because there's a lot more than one. There's a lot more than the 3 glutes even. If they're not all strong and working the way we're supposed to, the way that femur, the top joint, sits in that will affect as we come down into that knee joint. Now, instead of just going these two directions, it starts to rotate. So you get a knee bend. And so have you ever noticed, occupational hazard, you're at the grocery store, you're on the beach, and you watch somebody and they're either bow-legged or really the knees are almost touching, okay? And what you'll see is there's kind of this rotational pattern where their leg is turning in. So you can see it. You don't have to have a trained PT eye to see that that knee, they're not walking normal. They're not just going straight forward. And so that knee starts to rotate and rotate and rotate. And I really strongly believe that pain is not normal. And often we don't catch it early enough because one, that kind of, again, abnormal stress and strain on a knee may not cause pain for a long time. So you can actually wear that joint out for decades, maybe, even if you're young and healthy, until it starts to create pain, which is then when you start to address the problem. What we want to do is get to that stuff earlier, because I'm thinking, you know, not of the 20 or 30-year-old, I'm thinking about the 50, 60, 70-year-old where we've started to think that a joint replacement is normal. It's not. It shouldn't be. Methuselah lived over 900 years. Now, granted, you know, the world has changed a lot since Methuselah walked the earth. But I believe that God intended our knee joints probably to last a little bit longer than they have been in the most recent few decades. So how do you prevent that? You got to be strong in those hips in all 3 directions, okay? So that's forward and backwards, that's side to side, and the most important is rotation. So I'm going to take us back even to what we had said about Hannah, who's pregnant, and her hips are feeling a little bit off, and her SI joint, because things are moving there. But she needs to be working on bridging and clams or hip abduction, things that engage the outside. We talk a lot about the benefit of planks. I am not a fan of planks, and I'm not doing them, team. Sorry, we usually plank every day at lunch. I'm going to have to get back on that. But anything that starts to engage our hips and gets those working is actually going to be a huge benefit for the knee. The more the knee hurts long term, it actually becomes harder to strengthen the hips because you have to work through the knee. So, Liz, I hope that gives you a little bit more information, and that's where pain will move. Always keep that in mind. And it seems to, for some people, it ends up in the knee based on how their mechanics of their body works. Sometimes it's their hip, sometimes it's low back, sometimes it's numbness and tingling. So usually what we're looking for is, and I know Liz, she's really strong and exercises all the time. So I'm making the assumption that this might be you. It may not be, but it's going into those next level of strengthening to go, am I hitting all the directions? And that's where, you know, when we evaluate somebody, which I did a recheck, like I said, on somebody with a post-surgical knee, I am making sure all those directions, not only are they strong, but are they equally strong? Because most of the time people don't have pain in both knees or both hips. What you do need to be strong in both hips, glutes, pelvic floor, they need to be equally strong. If there's a big differential from one side to the other, it will throw the whole thing off. So again, a lot of these conversations when we're talking about either sciatic pain, numbness and tingling, knee stuff, it is all related. So when we get to Heather, who says she's slacked off on her exercise. Let's see, I do totally fine throughout the day, but every night wake up with that booty and hip pain. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit because it's something I've been struggling with as well, Heather. And what this is the great thing about what I get to do is, oh wait, God gave me the same tools that everybody else has. I have a human body that I like to do different exercises and do different movements to see if I can't fix my own problems. And then I always go, shoot, if I do those exercises, I actually don't hurt. And there's this, do I just take ibuprofen and make my headache go away? Or do I lay on the floor and do 10 to 15 minutes of exercise and darn it, it worked. It made my pain go away. This is what we should do, folks. We should take good care of our bodies. It's the only one we get. We don't want to wear those joints out. So if we're talking about waking up with hip pain, booty pain, right, Heather? One of the things I have noticed is I continue to be tighter in my right front hip. And when I go to bed at night, I miss sleeping on my stomach. Like it's my favorite thing, but I can't do it and crank my neck because I have a history of a neck issue. If I had a nice healthy neck, I would totally do it. But I want to open up the front of that right hip. It kind of aches and it feels tight and it's different. So I know that the right front hip feels very different than the left. And if I sit too much, whether that's now in my new corner office here at home, or I sit on the couch because I need a break and I'm watching some TV, it's kind of a dull ache and it can wake you up at night because it's starting to, change how that pelvis is working and all those kind of things. So this also ties into that extension thing that we talked about earlier when it comes to nerve compression in the back, the graham crackers, all those kind of things. If you're just joining us, you can watch this later. Get on the floor at night, flat on your stomach, flat on the floor. Try to have everything lined up fairly straight. What I mean by that is when you lay when you're on your tummy on the floor, your feet, actually the top of your feet should be on the floor. Now, some of us are more turned out or more turned in. You want to be neutral is what I'm saying. So try to correct for that. And if you're, again, turned out or turned in, that means the muscles in your cheeks aren't strong and they're not holding you in that nice neutral position. So that also ties into what we're looking at when it comes to knee alignment and stuff like that. So I'm laying flat on my tummy and I'm doing prone press-ups, extension. Rachel, you're going to need to remind me, we need to do a video that shows our extension program. We'll do that next week. How's that, guys? We'll pick a date next week and we'll do extension exercises. We'll figure out how to make the video. I'll figure out how to make the video work to show you how to open things up. Because what we're talking about is we're bent over too much. Gravity is always winning. So Heather, you're on the floor. You're going to keep your pelvis on the ground. And I think you know how to do this. And open up, push back. One of the things I'm tweaking when we're doing this is, yes, I'm doing extension, so I'm getting my back to move, which is one of the things we would do if there is a disc issue or a nerve compression. It's one of the things we would try. But one of the things I've been playing around with is adding an element of twist a rotation in my spine. And so if I'm on the floor, again, I'm flat, I do that extension, my elbows go straight, but I keep my pelvis on the floor. I may roll my upper body to the right or to the left, or kind of do a reach. And because it's my right hip, I'm going to reach to the left. And I can actually open up that diagonal. Can you see that, guys? Sorry, I'm talking with my hands so much. I can't help myself. I need to have a human body here. They'd have to be 6 feet away for me to actually touch them. I've been adding that element of adding a little bit of side bending or rotation, and it opens up the front of that hip a little bit better. So if you're waking up with it at night, I would recommend doing some tummy time, as Christine in our office would say. Do that extension. While you're doing this extension, give your glutes some good squeezing. Make sure that they're engaged, but open that up. We can progress from there, but spend some time doing that. So it certainly may not be the cure-all, and you need to get back on the wagon of doing the exercises to stay strong. Here's the thing about our bodies. If they don't stay, they use it. It's a use it or lose it. Now, what I always like to say is when we're doing exercise with people, and we call them therapy exercises, it is physical therapy exercises. The goal, however, is once you've gone through the appropriate course of treatment and we've returned you back to a normal, healthy life, the idea is that you are then maintaining those as just exercise. Now, your kids come home, school's at home, your spouse is at home, the world is hit pause. Our routines all are changed right now. And I was just starting to get into a normal, regular exercise routine. I was starting to push some weights. I was doing cardio. I was feeling good. And the gym closed because everything got put on pause. And I'm like, oh, I was finding the right exercises for my hip to actually make it work. So I need to be more creative at this time in creating that habit. So, gonna yawn. Oh, excuse me. So what I'm saying, Heather, and in general, is after you're done with your course of therapy, the idea is that you're doing those exercises like a regular exercise program twice a week. 20 to 30 minutes, 2 times a week. A good glute strengthening program, for the most part, will keep you strong. And that, at that point, can be a little bit more advanced. But you're using an exercise ball, or you're doing planks, you're doing bridging, you're doing squats. But you've learned how to do them correctly for your body. So that really does make a benefit you long term. So anybody else have anything else they want to ask me? I'm going to take a drink of water here. I usually do video calls with like a whole group of people. So there's a screen of like 20 people in front of me where we're discussing different topics. So this solo business is no joke, like just talking to myself. So anybody else have anything else they want to ask me? Otherwise, I'm going to sign off. But what we will do is I will make sure to schedule time next week where we talk about extension. We will specifically do an extension evening. And if any of you have a specific request for time or you watch this later, it'll either be Tuesday or Thursday next week. I will tell you that. We'll do Tuesday or Thursday. If I have a specific request, just kind of depends on what my schedule looks like. I'm doing a lot of online meetings these days. And again, I'm in the office. I'm semi-quarantined, helping those post-surgical patients right now on Mondays and Wednesdays. One-on-one, solo, wiping everything down. I'm washing my hands. We're keeping, and praying for the good Lord to also provide his hand of protection to keep us healthy through this. So anything else anybody has? All right, so we'll end on this note. We'll make sure that next week we do some extension stuff. This is great to combat posture, like that we sit so much. It's made a huge difference in the numbness and tingling I often get in my hand, headaches, neck pain, and again, combats the fact that we sit too much. So we'll schedule that for Tuesday or Thursday next week. Be looking for that. And if you have any other questions in the meantime, we'll do another Ask Melissa Anything in the next couple of weeks, and maybe we'll continue this after the quarantine ends. But know that we're here to help. The whole idea is we're in the middle of this unforeseen, strange, unique time. And while nobody really knows quite when it will end, it is truly my belief that the world will go back to normal or Jesus will come. And I kind of would prefer the second option at this point, to be perfectly clear. I want Jesus to come. I want pain and suffering to end. But until that day comes, it is my goal to help people to live without pain, to take the best care of their bodies possible, because remember, pain is not normal. Melissa out.